building regulations, for example, pretty much focuses on thermal performance, and I'll focus this a bit on retrofit because that's where it's really relevant. So if we're really thinking about what we have to achieve with a retrofit project in terms of thermal performance, the building regs will be looking for us to achieve a U value in our external wall fabric, for example, of 0.3. That's a target value. The regs also have what's called a threshold value, and that threshold value is 0.7. And what those regs are really saying is that you should be driving to get 0.3. That's the target value. But if there's a really compelling reason, and that might be different for every project, it might be different for every client, why a higher U value, so something within that 0.3 to 0.7 range might be more appropriate, A, financially, B, for security and safety of the building fabric, then that's also acceptable. And that's a discussion that you can have with building control to see what might be appropriate for a specific project. So we know we can work within a framework of performance standards. When you're internally insulating, and I'll do this example with wood fiber, even a relatively thin layer of insulation material can dramatically reduce the overall performance, or dramatically improve the overall thermal performance of the building. So on the graph there, you can see on the x-axis, I've got insulation thickness. On the y-axis is the U value of the existing wall. And I've done a range there from an existing brick wall with a U value of around about 3, which is the red line, and a U value of around about 1.5, which is the green line. And you can see there, even with a 20 mil layer, I'm getting a significant improvement on U value. But even with just a 40 mil layer, I'm already getting down into that threshold level, that level that might well be acceptable with discussion and with deliberation with building control. A 60 mil layer of insulation puts you right in the middle of that zone. And it also highlights that that might also be an appropriate thickness in terms of your return on investment. Because in order to get my 100% energy savings, so if I drive to get to 0.3, which would in theory give me my regulatory requirement energy savings, I'm having to put around 100 mil of insulation on the internal side of the wall. But I get around about 95% of that improvement with 80 mil thickness. And that goes right down to, I get around 80% improvement with just a 40 mil thickness. So I can use 2.5 times as much insulation, but I'm really only getting about 15 to 20% performance improvement. And what that highlights is that in order to get the best value for money, it's the first 40 to 80 mil of insulation thickness that really gives us our best performance, our best return on our investment. That means that we're also sitting in that zone of 0.3 to 0.7 in terms of performance standard, which means we have the ability to sit with building control, talk to them about the type of materials that we want to use, the reasons why we want to use them, because we're also thinking about sustainability, less condensation risk. We don't want to use a thicker material. We don't potentially want to use a petrochemical. And then building control can say, well, actually, for this particular building, this particular project, that performance value of 0.4, 0.5 is actually appropriate. On that calculation, we've worked based on around about 60 mil thickness. So is that always the right thickness? Well, again, that depends on what your key drivers are. So you could just use a 20 mil insulation thickness. You would be saving space. There would be a lot less capital outlay to start with. But of course, you're not getting the overall thermal performance improvement that you'd want to get. So long term, there's no real reduction or no tangible reduction in your energy bills. And conversely, if I'm using 100 mil insulation, as I said at the beginning as well, I'm getting a much better thermal performance. My bills are being reduced, but my initial costs are that much higher. I'm reducing my room sizes significantly, and I've got potential risk of condensation. So really the best thing to do is to balance all of those. And for any particular project, again, you can get full hydrothermal analysis done